let's just start on these results. So 75% people likely to take it, but the cohort, 29% of those said yes, probably. How do you get to them being yes, definitely? Is it sort of carrot or stick? Do you tell them, hey, this will be great for you and give them a bonus, or hey, we won't let you into a pub, we won't let you into a workplace, you've got to get this done?
Well, I think first of all, let's try and get the don't knows across to the probable and definitely as well. But for me, it's the carrot approach, if at all possible. So explaining the safety, the idea that the TGA is an excellent organisation that has done due diligence on these vaccines, that have been produced onshore in most cases by CSL and others, and as much as possible go the information route and the carrot approach. Now, the stick approach, it's very hard to legislate on this. In fact, it could act against us and drive those who are not in favour fully away, and that would be a shame. It's also about peer pressure. The more and more people who do it, especially those in public places and public figures who take it early, this also can drive confidence. And as soon as we start to see more and more building evidence, as we will, that it prevents illness and allows us to get back to normal life that we love so much in Australia, then I think we'll see a cascade towards more and more vaccination.
Yeah, perhaps it's on all of us there to just gently cajole anyone who's a bit reluctant. As for the rollout itself, so look, we've got this timeline, without times if you like, we've got the phases of it. The biggest factor to getting a full rollout appears to be AstraZeneca because of the huge number of doses and also the fact we can make it ourselves. What's your view on how good a bet AstraZeneca is looking right now?
Well, certainly from a production side, I think this is good. I think we should not get distracted too much by what's happening across in Europe. It's a different area, and with the agreements in this region, then I think the government have done a good job of managing that. I think we should also make sure we watch, and we have backed a couple of other horses. And I'll put it in here now, we also need to also watch carefully the variants. And this is a question that we're all facing now. Interesting information coming out of South Africa on the reaction of a couple of the new vaccines against the South African variant, and that efficacy dropping down. So that is a worry. We need to watch that carefully and make sure that we don't switch off research in the other 180 plus vaccine trials that are going on around the world.
Right, so is it logical, and if we look at obviously pandemics past, that those variants will take over? If they are more contagious, they go through the population and they become the dominant variants. And what is happening to counter that? Is it a case of the rest of the 180 candidates you were talking about, or reformulating, for want of a better description, the vaccines that are already working pretty well?
Yes, you can do both. Certainly the scientists involved in the production of the big manufacturing groups, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca and others, will be looking at that as well. They'll be very carefully watching, first of all, the current vaccine's efficacy against the variants, and then looking at inside their manufacturing chains how they can adapt. Sometimes they can do this. They can add extra proteins and things if they're a specific protein-based one. Others, a little bit more difficult to do. If they're using the entire virus, then, of course, you have a larger coverage, perhaps not as easy to get resistant to that vaccine type. And that's why we need different families, I suppose, of types of virus vaccine as well. So that's happening. I think you can also look at this as, unfortunately, this is what we do for flu already. Every year there are global meetings, particularly in the northern winter and the southern winter periods, where we look at what's transmitting around the world. And this is part of the human population getting used to living with COVID. We cannot, again, it's been said many times, but vaccines will not be that silver bullet. We'll have to know that it will gradually adapt and live with us over time. We will never eradicate COVID from life.
And yeah, so at the moment, as you point out, we pick the strains of influenza likely to hold the most threat, and we don't always get that right. But if we look at this current rollout, so we're still being told it should have a full rollout in Australia of the vaccine by October. Let's assume that's all rosy and that all works out. But if these strains take over, not only do you have not every single person getting inoculated, obviously, not just because of reluctance, but health issues as well, but these vaccines getting less effective, we seem to be looking at a point in October here where we're not going to have herd immunity effectively. Is that looking less likely?
So it's hard to if we were to get resistant to, or to try and become resistant through herd immunity to a new variant, yes, it's a really mathematical equation. You're looking for coverage amongst the population. So ideally, 100% or as close as possible to 100% of the population take a vaccine. And the vaccine needs to transmit immunity to a large proportion. Now, the old mathematics were around 65% of the population needed to be herd immune. Now, some of the new variants, if they're much more transmissible, then the level required and coverage needs to rise. So it's purely a mathematical equation as to work out herd immunity amounts. But again, we're talking just in Australia, and we can't remain isolated from the rest of the world forever. And so we need to look at what's happening around the rest of the world. We need to watch carefully and be worried by what's happening in Africa, where their plan is to immunize up to 20% of the population by the end of 2021. So that gives another 80% of the population still non-immune. We need to know what's happening around the rest of the world. So anywhere the variants grow in those kind of unimmunized populations mean that gradually, as we open our borders, it can re-enter our population if it's a new variant. And we are not immune to it. So we are, and we need to continue to be a global citizen in this.
Yeah, well, as you say, the opening up the borders will be the tricky part there.